Greetings! This is Griff Ruby, the Nostalgia Catholic, with another Isaac Asimov short story review. And this one was contained in Super Science Fiction, the December 1957 issue, and it was the story titled The Gentle Vultures by Isaac Asimov. This cover does not appear to be connected to the story, even though that's on there. Perhaps it's associated with the other story or some other story or just a random cover. I don't know. At any rate, it is also listed with a tiny blurb even outside the table of contents. So, here it is, The Gentle Vultures by Isaac Asimov, page 2, and it says, The Hurrians waited for Earth to have its atomic war. Yeah, I haven't seen any blurbs in a while, but there is a blurb. So, we then get to the story here as presented. I wasn't able to notice any difference between the way the story is presented here and the way the story appears in Nine Tomorrows. There may be minor variations of punctuation or something, or perhaps spelling or whatever, but on the whole it is obviously the same story with virtually nothing in the way of tweaks. What you do miss, of course, in going to the book instead of the original magazine is, you get the cover sheet there, Gentle Vulture by Isaac Asimov, illustrated by EMSH, and a little blurb, I'll read that shortly, and some artwork showing these creatures. The flying saucer has landed, and there are these sort of monkey-like creatures who in fact are the alien beings who have decided to exploit other life forms that develop a nuclear power, nuclear explosives. And apparently what seems to be the very common pattern is that they get the nuclear powers and bombs, and next thing you know, they blow themselves to pieces, and then this little race steps in and kind of helps pick up the pieces with some tweaks. They start different kinds of selective breeding and other things to kind of make them very peaceable, non-aggressive, non-expansionist, and just basically content to just survive. I think that's kind of a common theme in a lot of Asimov's writings. There's always that push-pull between it'd be nice to have a quiet, stable, prosperous life, but on the other hand, when you have challenges and difficulties, and maybe the very threat that things could go wrong, and for some, at least some people do in fact go wrong, it's scarier. It's a lot worse. But on the other hand, that can also be a good thing because it keeps people on their edge, keeps them sharp, keeps them developed. Like iron sharpens iron, and all that sort of thing. So, at any rate, this is what they do. Let's start with the blurb here. It says, the Hurrians could not understand why Earth didn't have its nuclear war. Everything was set up for it, and on other worlds it had always happened on time. So, it's now, let's see here, maybe about 12, 13 years since we set off nuclear bombs in a war. We set off other ones as just peaceful tests here and there, including a much bigger hydrogen bomb than the mere atomic bomb that had actually seen use during World War II. But these were all detonated peacefully in isolated spots where at least we wouldn't hurt each other very much. There was radiation, and sometimes people stationed nearby got some more than they would have liked. Some of them got leukemia. There was also the issue of the fallout, and that would come down in all sorts of places and cause its sicknesses, mutations, and whatnot in various places. So there were things, and at some point they finally just had to stop doing this testing, and fortunately the major superpowers at the time agreed to do that. So at least for a while they just did stuff underground, so at least you don't get fallout in the atmosphere, and then in time they even stopped doing that. So that was a good thing. And apparently, according to these Hurrians, these monkey creatures, This is a very unusual development because usually when uh, beings on a planet develop the ability to make nuclear bombs, they blow each other to smithereens, and then there's just a few left that can be, a few remnants left that can kind of take over for everybody. And then they'll step in and they'll do their help. We only want to help you. But they wait for this to happen. They won't prevent the explosion because as long as they haven't blown themselves up, they're aggressive, they're strong, they're militaristic. They can't really be dealt with. They just stay away. And then there's Earth. And here we are. It's 1957 still. And this might have been written vaguely mid 57, which might roughly coincide with, so about 12 years after the nuclear bomb. Nothing's happened. Nothing. I mean, other tests have been set off, but we never had that war. We had something called the Cold War, which was itself a very unusual thing. And so they finally end up wondering what will they do. The solution to all of this, at some point they actually capture a human, an untamed human, and the untamed human is kind of tough and rough and violent and kind of hard to handle. They have this one particular species of another semi-primate that's just very, very obedient and just does whatever they're told, doesn't ask any questions, and they're very strong and they kind of act like the security guards and keep things under control. So the wild human doesn't, can't do anybody any harm. And, well, it's called the Gentle Vultures. I'm glad there was a piece of artwork there because somehow, even though it talks about that they're kind of monkey-like faces and somebody says, oh my goodness, they're monkeys. Holy Toledo, they're monkeys. They have, somehow, you can read something and just miss something, miss a detail. And I hadn't pictured them as being monkeys. And then I see the drawing, they're supposed to be little monkeys, and as I'm reading through, it actually says so. It's kind of terrible when something's in the story and you read the story and there's still something in there you miss. Okay. Well, that kind of is a measure of the fact that although it has many interesting aspects to it, at least personally, it's never been one of my more favorite stories. The solution of all is pretty simple, or the denouement, I should say. And the vultures what the vultures have to do with it is that these beings have become like vultures. A vulture finds this creature stranded in the desert where it's going to die, and then it just hangs around waiting for it to die, and then it has food. Oh, and there's one more step that I think, well, why don't we help this little war along, and maybe the humans will have their war, and then they'll be, ready for us to help them. And, well, that's like a vulture, pecking the eyes out of a creature as it's dying to kind of encourage it to die more quickly. And somehow, something about the imagery, well, let's just say, as I say, the denouement is they decide to leave, and it just kind of breaks down their whole culture and way of doing their, I guess you could call it a kind of colonization. And that's the Gentle Vultures. It is it's another Isaac Asimov classic, and like I say, it's in 9 tomorrows. If you can't find the original magazine without the artwork or the blurb, of course. And it works pretty well. Well, it's a good little story, I guess. Even if it somehow never really all that much appealed to me personally. Thanks for listening.